Alright, good morning. My name is Trent, and today I will be repeating the speech by our classmate Laura Hernandez. And her advocate's main claim was the abortion is murder, first-degree murder in California. The initiative for abortion is first-degree murder in California will be problemsome for women's reproductive health in California, and it will also overturn Roe versus Wade. And then a second claim that she made was outlining both abortion and birth control would be creating problems for women. So after doing some research on this, the first claim that this initiative would overturn Roe versus Wade, it's actually pretty much true. In the initiative, it says that Section D of the initiative, that abortion or any taking of an innocent human life is not protected by a right to privacy under Section 1 of the Constitution. So pretty much, when it comes down to that, it would never go through if it were passed. The language would have to be changed because the Supreme Court would be knocking on our door saying, how did this get passed, because it violates the Constitution. So that's really a moot point in the for a claim. Now the second claim that this initiative will create problems for women, it says that in the initiative it says that women will be restricted for their reproductive birth control rights. So the advocate said that at least every women rely on at least one method of birth control in order to avoid unwanted pregnancy. So in the initiative, it doesn't say which birth control would be restricted. And that leads to my second counter argument is abortions have been down due to better birth control methods. And one is the IUD, which has been helping steer unwanted birth as unwanted pregnancy. Also, the Government Institute data on abortion says that it's at an all-time low, and the raw number in 2014 said it was under 1 million abortions in the country. And then the advocate also used a reference by a Professor Mary Ziegler, commenting that in protesting Roe v. Wade this year, March for Life celebrated a record low abortion rate, proclaiming that love saves lives. That's a pretty hasty generalization, considering that abortion doesn't really save lives. It kind of gets rid of a human life. So that's just a moot point when it comes to abortion. Other than that, so in conclusion, this initiative will probably never pass, and it's just, that's it.
All right, well, you labeled the claims and the secondary issues pretty clearly. The first point you're basically conceding because the premise of the initiative is to overcome Roe versus Wade. You do have an argument here that talks about whether or not there is a likelihood of a court challenge on this. I think that this argument needs to be developed a little bit more. If the states are allowed to define what is appropriate or inappropriate under Roe versus Wade, and California decides to define this as being inappropriate, then I guess that would in fact present a risk to women on those rights as you were talking, as the advocate was talking about it. The more general question is, of course, that it only applies to California, it doesn't apply to the rest of the nation, and so that's I think maybe the advocate's making a broader generalization that's possible. You've got a kind of a criticism here, but there's no evidence on this particular point. It's all assertion on this. One of the things that I think is a little missing on this is the notion that we're talking about something that's highly speculative at this point. I don't know if this initiative has qualified for the ballot yet, if it's going to be on the ballot. It may simply be one of those things that they're collecting signatures for. Second, if it is on the ballot, one of the things that you might look at is its likelihood of passage. I suspect that in the state of California, the likelihood that it would be passed would be relatively small. There's no opinion polls on those sorts of issues specifically, but there are opinion polls about how people feel about access to abortion, specifically how Californians feel about access to abortion, and you might be able to make an inference from that that suggests that it's unlikely that we would ever have to worry about this as an issue. You seem to have gone at it in a different direction. It's a very defensive posture, and I think you could be a little bit more offensive on this argument and suggest that this is just we're worrying about something that isn't really likely to confront us. That it is it's an argument about an unlikely circumstance that would only occur if a strange conclusion of events occurred, and it's unlikely that those things would occur. The issue about which kind of birth control is affected by this, I think that might be relevant here. Your argument suggesting that birth control has made a difference in the number of abortions, well, I think the advocate could come back and say, yeah, that's the problem. If we get rid of those kinds of birth control that have been effective, then what we're going to be left with is women who have to seek abortions for unwanted pregnancies. Whereas if they had access to these things, we don't know exactly what is being covered on this. That would probably require greater scrutiny of what the proposed initiative is. And by the way, I think there's another argument here about what the courts would do with something that doesn't define things very clearly. The courts, who's to make the decision on this particular issue, if it's not specified in the initiative, that's going to be a problem for the initiative. It's less likely to be a problem for consumers, because it's unlikely that businesses who sell these products are going to suddenly say, well, I think I might be covered by this, so let me stop selling my product in California. That's very speculative. The declining number of abortions is, both sides seem to agree that there's a declining number of abortions. One side seems to feel that there is, in fact, a problem with any kinds of abortions, and I think that that's really where the dispute is going to be on this issue, and we're kind of skirting around it by focusing on this hypothetical initiative at this point. So I think you went at it a little bit more indirectly. I think you could be a little bit more forceful in some of the arguments that you make about the underlying premise of the argument here. Okay, thank you.